And here we are for yet another unboxing, and today we have the Kyosho Mad Wagon VE. Now, as you can see, with everything out of the box, you get the truck fully assembled and ready to go. You have your radio over on this side, and we've got a couple of bags over here. Now, this one here, of course, has the user manual, and it's also got a bind plug in there in case you need to rebind it to the car. Now, the user manual is a little bit thick, but don't let that scare you. It's actually got a lot of useful information in here. It's written in a couple of languages, so there's a lot of pages that you can go through with anything that you need to do on the car. You got maintenance that you can perform, repairs, part numbers for everything. You got information regarding how to use the vehicle, what ESC settings that it comes with stock out of the box, how, what little dials on the radio, what everything means. So even if you're completely new, the manual should be able to help you get started quite easily. And of course, you want to hang on to it in case you ever want to do some repairs or maintenance on the truck. Now, this little bag here does have some spares and some tools in here as well. The tools are a little cross wrench that you can see there. There's also some Allen keys in there, and you've also got a turnbuckle key. There's a couple of big plastic pieces that you'll see floating around in the bag. These, I've been told, are not needed. They're not spares for anything. You can pretty much just dispose of these as far as I'm aware. But you do have a couple of spare, I think they're like shock rod ends and some turnbuckle rod ends and stuff like that in there. You got some spare shock pistons and some preload spaces for your shocks in case, of course, you want to do some maintenance on those. Now, the radio is one that I've shown on the channel before. I actually got one of these when I unboxed the Mad Van VE that you see over there. And this is actually a really nice radio. Straight away, when you pick it up, you'll notice the rubber grip on the handle here. It actually feels really, really good. The trigger's got a nice weight to it. It's not too heavy, not too light. The wheel feels really good, and it also has this little angle on here, which means that when you're holding the radio, it's surprisingly comfortable. You don't have to kink your wrist or anything. So it's actually really nice to use this. Runs on 4 AA's, no collapsible antennas to break off. There is a slider switch over here that is currently not in use. And then all your dials and everything on the back here. If I can bring this up in my camera to focus, you can see steering trim and steering dual rate just over here. Throttle trim is over on this side, and then you have throttle EPAs both forward and reverse there. Couple of reverse switches down the bottom, some LED indicator lights regarding batteries and stuff, and then of course you've got your on and off switch just over there. So a really nice radio. Although it is a little bit big and bulky, there's really no need to swap this one around. And finally, we get to have a look at the truck itself, and here it is in all its glory. It actually doesn't look too bad, although I know that some people are either going to love or hate the body. The body is a bit of an acquired taste. It's got that SUV kind of station wagon looking thing, and of course the color scheme may appeal to some people with the the stars and stripes and stuff, or it may not. It does come in 2 colors. You got the white and blue, and there's also a gray color. Like all these other colors here are like gray. So it doesn't, it's not bad color schemes. I know that the body is probably going to be the talking point here, but there is some good news regarding the body, or at least the body post. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So I'll quickly take this off and just talk about the quality of the body itself. It does have a plastic grille on the front here with LED buckets, so you can actually put LED lights in this. You have some plastic skids on the roof here. And they actually bolted in from underneath there, as you can see. The body thickness and quality itself, it leaves a little bit to be desired. I'm gonna be honest, it feels a little bit flimsy. There's no like sharp angles on this or anything to really add some strength to it. So we'll see how it holds up. Hopefully, it's only a 3S truck, not a 1/8 scale. So it feels a little flimsy along the sides as well, but we'll see. I don't want to call it just yet. Hopefully the body holds up okay. So here is the truck. I'll show you the entire layout. Motor on this side, receiver box, steering servo, battery tray, and ESC. We'll start with the tires. Tires actually feel really, really good. I like the rubber compound on these. I like the foams on these. The wheels are also quite nice. The only thing that concerns me is the tread pattern. It's a little bit flat. So I think this will lend itself to be rather grippy on the road. I'm not sure how this is going to work on the off-road terrain. Having said that, I know that that's a completely different tire, but the Mad Van had me worried as well until I actually drove it. And those tires work beautifully on the BMX track. So, that proved me wrong, because that style of tire, you know, with the V shape and everything. Every other car that I've had has never really worked off-road, and that one did. So who knows, maybe, you know, Kyosho sprinkled their little fairy dust on these tires as well, and these are actually going to grip okay. Now for suspension, feels pretty good. I would have to say that the back is probably more dampened than the front, and that kind of makes a little bit of sense because obviously you got the motor weight back here, you got ESC, and once the battery's in here, it's going to weigh a little bit more in the back and then, you know, prevent the car from squatting too much. So kind of makes sense that the front is a bit lighter. A lot of cars are set up that way, but it is quite noticeable in this particular vehicle. As we move back here, we can see a wheelie bar that is actually adjustable as well, so you can see some adjustment points just there. And you know, this actually I think is going to work okay. I don't think that these are actually ball bearings in here, so it's just probably just spinning on the screws or something like that. But who knows? It will probably hold up just fine. I'm probably going to adjust this one all the way up because the way it is at the moment, it's quite low and it's not going to really allow for any sort of major wheelies. And plus, if you're jumping it, you don't want this thing sort of sticking out too far. It might interfere a bit, so I don't want that. The shocks themselves. Yeah, look, there's going to be some talk about the shocks because a truck that's at this price point here in Australia, we'd probably expect to see something a little bit nicer than this. Having said that, Armour Steel uses plastic shocks on their vehicles. Team Magic also uses plastic shocks on the E5 HX 3S trucks. And those shocks, for the most part, hold up okay. Although the Armour ones leak a lot. I know I've had that experience with the shocks sitting around for a while, and I know a lot of customers have had that issue as well. So we'll see how these ones behave. As long as the shock caps don't pop off, and I don't have any busted seals where the shocks just start leaking oil out of nowhere, I think this will actually be okay. So we'll see what happens. I would have preferred, at the very least, threaded body shocks. The fact that these actually come with preload spacers and everything just cheapen it out a little bit. Having said that, there are other components through here that we'll talk about, which really, you know, are quite impressive. So maybe this is just one of the little corners that they cut on the truck. You can see, of course, that we do have fixed camber links front and rear, so you can see those fixed links just there. We've also got plastic drive shafts in, you know, all the way around, with the exception of the center one, which is metal. And then, of course, that also has a slipper clutch in the middle, which is you can actually access, I think, from this side. You can just see the little bolt just there with the spring, so you can actually access that and adjust the clutch as you go. So that's, you know, we'll see how these plastic drive shafts kind of work. A lot of companies have been using plastic drive shafts for a long time. If they are done right from factory, they should hold on okay. You know, you're not going to bend these like you would a metal drive shaft, but of course these are more susceptible to breaking, I suppose. That's the only downside if there's a lot of power going through the truck. Now, of course, the big talking point here is this massive brace going through the middle in the grey. This is a very strong brace that they've put here. And on top of that, this does run an aluminium chassis that you can see there. I believe that this is I think it's a 2.5 mil or 2 mil. It doesn't look as thick as like your 8 scale. So the brace should definitely help keep this guy nice and straight. And of course, as you can see on the arms there, solid arms all the way. So there's no holes in these at all. Hopefully these will actually hold up well. So, you know, there are other, you know, the shocks may be a bit of something that we can always upgrade later on, but, you know, the important things here, like your chassis and the way that they've done the arms and everything, the bracing that they've done on a truck, I think they've actually done this pretty well. You know, it just remains to be seen whether or not when we put it into practice, it's actually going to hold up okay. Metal gear steering servo up here, waterproof receiver box up here, and then we have a 3668 2850 kV 4-pole brushless motor. This is essentially a 1/8 scale motor. I believe it also has a 5mm shaft on this guy. And then we've got our ESC over here, which looks like a Max 10 ESC, like one of those SCT ones. And then we are using Deans on this guy. I'm of course going to be swapping that out to XT60s because that's what I use. It does have a on and off switch with the push button, which I really appreciate because there's, you know, less chance of it sliding itself off. And then we have our battery tray over here with a couple of Velcro straps. Now, something to keep in mind with the battery tray, you can see just how narrow it is. you can really only put your batteries on their side. You can't lay them down flat. So just keep that in mind when choosing batteries for this. You can't get anything that's too thick and chunky because it's probably not going to fit in here. The one thing I will say in regards to the battery tray is that it has these ridges, and I'm not quite sure why they've got these ridges. Maybe it's to prevent the battery from sliding around, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe it'll be totally fine because there's multiples of them, and you know, rocks and stuff are not gonna be digging into the bottom of your battery. Maybe that's the idea. But yeah, it's just a different design. I probably would have preferred some padding instead. But given that this has Velcro straps, you can always put a bit of foam under there, I suppose. I may just do that myself. You can see that there's also a piece of aluminium just here in the front to add some strength to everything. We do have adjustable steering links, which is actually a good thing there, so you can actually adjust that. But just the fixed camber links, if you have a look at how the truck sits out of the box, you might be able to see that the camber is not 100% right. It's kind of pointing out just a little bit. I kind of prefer the camber to be in a little bit more. So that's probably one thing that they could have adjusted that a little bit better out of the factory. But I'm pretty sure, you know, given that there's an abundance of like steering link options out there, you can probably find something fairly cheap that you can replace these with if you do want to make some adjustments. So that's a good thing. Now, in regards to the body as well, as we go back up top, you can see that we've got adjustable body posts front and rear. And these are actually quite long too. So they actually go all the way to the bottom there. And this one, of course, you can run that all the way down, and you can always cut it as well, get some spares if you want to. If you want to run a different body, that's always something that you can do with this as well. Note that the antenna sticks out a little bit out of this antenna tube. So you might want to push that in just a little bit, just so that that little bit of wire doesn't get damaged, because that's what actually receives your signal. So I may actually do that before I run the truck. Actually, here we go, it's going in ever so slightly. So I'll fix that up. Oh, there we go, I think I got it. So I'll fix that up there. So that's pretty much it. The front bumper is actually very beefy as well. Looks a little bit like an Outcast bumper, to be honest. But I do like the way that it's actually designed. It feels like it's got some give on the ends, and then it's like super solid in the center there. So I think that's actually going to be able to take some hits. I'm hoping it does, because knowing my style of driving, you know, every now and again when I try to do something crazy, I end up nose darting my cars into the ground. So I could use all the support and help that this thing could come with. So that pretty much wraps up everything that the car is equipped with and all its little features. Let's move on to the wish list. So we'll start this one off with the body. As I said earlier, the body does feel a little bit thin. It feels a little bit vulnerable, I guess. So maybe some extra reinforcement, or maybe just using some slightly thicker Lexan. I think that would be a cool thing to see in the future. We'll see what happens there. And if you're going to put LED light buckets in the front, hey, why not do a couple on the back as well? I think that would be nice to include that in the future. Now, as we move on to the truck itself, first and foremost, let's talk about the shocks. As I said, I mean, at this price point, you'd kind of expect something a little bit more. The shocks do look a little bit cheap. It kind of cheapens the entire truck a bit. I'm not saying that they don't work well. Kyosho shocks, Kyosho suspension in general has always been very, very good. Anyone that has a Kyosho race kit would tell you this, that their shocks are probably some of the best in the world. Now, the fact that these are purely plastic doesn't mean that they're automatically crap. They could be very good shocks. But from somebody that just looking at a particular vehicle and just looking at the specs on paper, when you see plastic body shocks at a truck that's worth, I think these are going for like $650. So at least here in Australia, it kind of sort of leaves you going, well, I kind of would have preferred something a little bit better. Now, I'm not saying that these have to be full alloy 5mm shafts or anything like that, but at least threaded body shocks, maybe an aluminium shock cap. You can still have the plastic bodies, just something to say, hey, you know what, we've beefed these up a little bit, they're going to last you a little bit longer. So that's one thing I'd like to see. And adjustable camber links front and rear. I don't think it would be much different in price if we had these adjustable, because as I said, the camber on this out of the box just doesn't look 100% to me, and I would definitely like to see that as an additional option. And of course, maybe a better connector than Dean's. Now, of course, Dean's is fine for 3S. I just like to point that out because I'm very anti-Dean's. It would be nice to see something a little bit beefier with a truck that's got a motor this big and an ESC that size as well. Just something to point out. Aside from that, honestly, I can't really pick too much else on this truck that I'd like to see, you know, beefed up. I mean, I haven't driven the truck yet. Maybe it needs a better bumper. Maybe it needs better shock towers. I don't know, but just looking at it, just a couple of little things that I would like to see improved in the future. So we'll see how we go. Now, I gotta say, I personally love the fact that Kyosho has actually come out swinging with this particular truck. Now, in saying that, I know that there are some comments online that I've read that, you know, some people really, they don't like the body or they don't like the color scheme. They're not a fan of the, you know, the lack of aluminium shocks at this price point and so on and so forth. But ultimately, I do like the fact that Kyosho are really throwing their hat in the ring for the 3S basher machine, because the Mad Van that you see back there, as much as I love that truck, that is not a hardcore basher. That's not something that you can just take out and beat on it and it's going to be totally fine. It's going to have its own series of problems. It's not really designed to be a hardcore basher, and it's not trying to be. It's got mirrors, it's got light buckets, it's got a beautiful body that you can't help but feel guilty if you wreck it, scratch it or whatever. Whilst something like this, that has this huge, you know, chassis brace on it. It's got the alloy chassis, and it's got this body that you're either going to love it or hate it. I think this is more aimed at the hardcore basher, the person that wants to go to the BMX track like myself and do some sends, do some backflips, do some stunts. And if you do land wrong from time to time, this isn't just going to fall apart, or you're going to have bits of it flying off like mirrors and things like that. So I do like what Kyosho are going for here, and I appreciate the fact that we've now got another option. And of course, this option is either going to be really good for some of you out there in the world or not so good. It really depends on where this sits as far as pricing, parts availability, and so on and so forth, and whether or not this particular truck actually appeals to you. You know, is this going to be better than an Armour or a T-branded Stampede 4x4 or something like that? Well, that remains to be seen. We don't know. But I like what I'm seeing. And I think with just a few little tweaks in future releases, we may actually get a really good contender for top spot on the 3S basher market. So good on Kyosho for doing this. I personally am really looking forward to driving this truck. I think it's, you know, it's got all the goods, it's got all the bits that's going to make it at least drive decent. You know, if they're claiming a top speed of about 75 kilometers an hour on 3-cell, and they don't give you any optional gearing, so I'm assuming it does that speed out of the box. I mean, the Quantum Flux XT that I have did 75 Ks on 3S out of the box, and that's a car that's worth about half this much. So if this has the durability to outlast the Quantum Flux and go toe-to-toe with like an Armour or a T-brand vehicle, well then, you know, we've got ourselves a nice option that we can go for. So, you know, it remains to be seen. I'm going to drive it, I'm going to give it my all and see if I can actually break it and see how it performs. And there we go, that wraps up this unboxing of the Kyosho Mad Wagon VE. Now I do want to give a big shout out to Metro Hobbies for allowing me to have this car to do the unboxing for you, and of course being able to take it out there and do a bit of a bash video for you as well. Big shout out to Hobbies Australia for organising this for me and for the shop so that we can actually get some content out to you. And of course, if you are still here at the end of all this and you haven't smashed that like button yet, be sure to punch it right in its forehead and give this video a like, because I do appreciate it and it definitely means a lot to me. Of course, if you are also new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. That also means a lot to me and I do appreciate it. And check out the video description down below if you want to know a little bit more about this truck. I'll have links in there to the Kyosho website, as well as links to where you can get one of these here in Australia. That is it from me. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll be speaking to you next time. Too far. Not enough. Too far, damn it. And I'm really looking forward to driving this thing because as you guys may know, whoops, really, really nice. I'm really going to enjoy it. Yeah, start again. There's a turnbuckle key in there as well. And there's a couple of, damn it, stop that up. And isn't a hardcore basher. The Mad Van is definitely a car that you should definitely. And now for the dials on the back and all the switches and everything, you've got your steering trim and throttle trim over here, or is that vice versa? Yeah. No, that's steering dual rate, you dickhead. Okay.